The people of Pennsylvania want a fiscally responsible government here in Harrisburg that helps to promote a strong economy, not just in government, but continues to not burden our job creators and our citizens by taking more of their hard-earned money and sending it here. We finally presented a budget here today that we need to make sure is balanced. A budget that does not increase sales tax or income taxes, so I compliment the governor on that. I think it's good that the governor has finally joined our caucus in realizing the negative effects that tax increases have on Pennsylvania citizens and its businesses. At first glance, the budget that the governor just described seems to be a reasonable starting point for our budget negotiations. However, his budget proposal is a complicated document that will require thorough vetting. The budget proposal spends more than the majority of our caucus is most likely interested in spending. So we'll work together to craft a responsible budget with both sides of the aisle and the Senate and the governor. Our focus needs to be on ensuring that the dollars we're spending are truly moving Pennsylvania forward. We should not be starting new initiatives, increasing spending just to check a political box. In education, we're glad to see the governor has joined our caucus in understanding the need to focus on workforce development. Very soon, this chamber will take up a piece of legislation, the multiple package of Learn to Earn legislative package, specifically aimed at helping to improve our workforce development here in Pennsylvania and improve our work climate. In the vein of job creation, it's important that we recognize that agriculture is the largest industry in our state. The focus in this budget proposal on agriculture should be helpful in strengthening this important industry. Our caucus has been the leader in funding education throughout Pennsylvania. Under the House Republican leadership, funding for pre-K-12 education has increased by $3.4 billion since the Republicans took the majority in 2011. It's important that we continue to have a thoughtful conversation about the effectiveness of the dollars we spend in education. We shouldn't simply be pumping more money into a system without having a results-oriented focus. The governor's proposal to increase the minimum wage in such a drastic fashion is a concern that I have, and I think we all should have. Our focus should be creating more family-sustaining jobs in Pennsylvania and not continuing failed policies which lock hardworking men and women into entry-level jobs without any prospect of improving their economic circumstances. Minimum wage jobs, by the very nature and design of them, is to be stepping stones to gaining work experience that leads to an employee's job with higher pay. Of concern with this large minimum increase from the minimum wage is the potential job loss here in Pennsylvania. When the governor proposed his minimum wage increase last year, the Independent Fiscal Office estimated that when fully implemented, a $12 minimum wage would result in the loss of 33,000 jobs here in the Commonwealth. The same can be said by a report that Washington State University did in the effects of raising the minimum wage in the state of Washington. The loss of these jobs would be crushing to the workers throughout Pennsylvania as they look for entry-level jobs to begin their climb to economic ladder to find fiscal security. Our conversation about the minimum wage has left those hardworking folks out in the cold. It's time the advocates for increasing the minimum wage recognize the real-world impact that this would have. We should all be very skeptical about the amount of revenue the governor claims that can be raised by increasing the minimum wage. It is important that we are realistic about our revenue growth and don't ever overestimate our government revenues. You know, the General Assembly must ensure that we spend taxpayers' money that comes in a very open and transparent way. We in the House Republican caucus recognize the importance of taking care of our most vulnerable citizens. That's why we have consistently sought to make sure children, seniors, and those with intellectual disabilities and physical disabilities have adequate resources to live a full and meaningful life. It is clear, however, that the more needs to be done with our Department of Health and Human Services to make sure these dollars are being spent in an effective way and an impactful way. As needs continue to grow in the human services world, we need to look at some of the common sense reforms that help make these costs not rise at such an astronomical number. That is why we need to enact reasonable work requirements on able-bodied individuals. Having able-bodied adults engaged in meaningful work will help instill a greater sense of community throughout the state and will help transition people to a more fiscally stable path. To be perfectly clear, these work requirements would not apply to those with intellectual disabilities, physical disabilities, seniors, pregnant women. Let me repeat that. These work requirements would not apply to people with intellectual disabilities, physical disabilities, seniors, or pregnant women. This simple reform will also help the Commonwealth save money. More importantly, people will begin to gain employment, which will result in self-sustainment and less reliance on the state. These savings then can be used to meet the needs of more individuals currently waiting for state services. Our caucus will continue to be cautious with this budget proposal as we move forward, as we have our budget hearings over the next 3 weeks. And while the governor's change in tone with his budget proposal is welcome, and I thank him for it, the proposal has a lot of still unanswered questions. I am excited that we worked with the governor and the Republican caucus have put together a modern liquor system, a system that, for the first time, has recognized the right of individuals in violent neighborhoods, drug neighborhoods, to be able to get educational tax credits, to go to schools in safer neighborhoods. I'm glad that we worked with the governor as a Republican caucus to achieve pension reform, to bring about real pension reform for Pennsylvanians that will save the taxpayers of Pennsylvania billions of dollars. And I'm excited that it was the Republican caucus who first created a subcommittee on career and technical training in our Committee of Education. Our focus during these budget negotiations need to be on creating a budget that keeps growth low, fosters an environment for job creation, and creates values for our hardworking taxpayers throughout Pennsylvania. If we do that, we will continue to provide the services to the most neediest, and more importantly, we will finally stop the brain drain here in Pennsylvania that goes all the way back to Governor Ridge. It is important that we balance this budget, but not balance it by making it more difficult for businesses to create jobs in Pennsylvania.